Greetings, true believers. It is I, Matt Hall here from Hidden Machine, back with another First Impressions video on another early access game. This time around it is Retro Ninja Cyber Assassin. Retro Ninja Cyber Assassin. It's all one word. Sometimes. Except on the title screen, it's two words. The game hit Steam Early Access on April 1st, 2021, and although the game is currently free, the devs were nice enough to gift us a Steam key so we could check this out, alongside its unrated DLC, which apparently puts more gore and stuff into the game. But from my time with it, I didn't see a difference between the original and unrated flavors. But maybe I haven't dove deep enough yet to find the true unrated content. Now, this is an old school DOS-inspired first-person game, but it's not a first-person shooter, it's more of a first-person hack and slash. You do have limited projectiles with the ninja stars, but generally you're going to be punching, kicking, using various sharp objects, and occasionally the loose severed limb to take on a sea of admittedly samey-looking sprites. There is a screenshot on Steam of what appears to be a flaming triple-shot crossbow, although I admittedly did not find that crossbow, and I'm assuming it shows up later in the game, and I didn't get super far into this game, and I'll tell you why eventually, but let's go over the basics. The game has a sort of cyberpunk feel, and one big corporation has taken over everything, and you're assumedly inside of the offices of this corporation because all of the levels I've seen so far are parking garages or corridors of partition walls that you'd see in an office setting, server rooms, and things like that. The game does not give a ton of backstory, but my assumption based on context clues is that you are an employee of this mega corporation who has decided to break out of your shell, and you're going to go on a bloody rampage to take them down. Now, whether this is a technical limitation or some sort of statement about the loss of identity and individualism one might experience while being a mindless drone office worker at some sort of mega corporation that runs the world, every enemy you encounter, for the most part, looks like this. There are several other enemy types in the game, but this is the main one you'll be experiencing at the start, alongside these stick figure ninjas, which on normal difficulty can seemingly take you down in one hit, even if you have 1,000 HP. I do think the balance on these ninja characters is a bit askew. Before speaking on this game, I did do another run on very easy mode instead of normal mode, and the ninjas didn't really present much of a problem. It'd be nice to find something somewhere in between the two, but maybe I just need to get good. As you hack and slash your way through the levels, you're looking for 3 different types of keys. Some of them are keys that you'd pick up off of a janitor. Some of them are security badges that you use to open special locked doors that use some sort of security system. And thirdly, some doors have retinal scanners on them, and so what you need to do is find a retina. That's right, you need to, out of all these enemies, the hundreds of enemies that come at you in waves throughout the level, one of them will drop an eyeball, and you use that eyeball to open the doors that use the retinal scanners. Now, I do think this game is a sort of cruel and bizarre type of jank that a lot of people won't have patience for, and I can't fault them for feeling that way, but the game is fun. I mean, I only spent about 2 hours with it before talking about this, but this is not a in-depth, thorough review. This is a first look at the game. A lot of what the game has to offer in its first few levels is a sort of needle in a haystack type game design, where you're fighting waves of enemies that all look the same as you go down corridors that all look the same as you search for keys that are sometimes impossible to see. You just walk over them and you find them eventually. It's frustrating, and it's definitely not for everyone, But for some reason, I did have a lot of fun with it. Having grown up playing a lot of DOS games, the idea of a sort of maze-like key hunt is not really a foreign concept to me, and not something that I find all that distasteful. While the combat is fairly repetitive, it's also in the style of a beat-em-up genre, which is often fairly repetitive, and I don't really see that as a negative. It's just kind of how these games work. You can't really go into a DOS-style beat-em-up or hack-and-slash type game and then be upset that there's not a, incredibly varied move set, Most of the entertainment comes from the different weapons, interacting with the environment, the over-the-top gore where you send heads flying down corridors until they hit a wall and finally drop. I don't want to say that this is a joke game, but it's also not a game that's meant to be taken overly seriously. And for the low price of absolutely free, there's not a lot to complain about. Although I do have a few things I want to complain about. First of all, the sound effects are a complete assault on my ears, and I can't fucking stand them. Your cyber punch sounds like someone repeatedly banging on an empty steel barrel, and a lot of the sound effects are just so repetitive and so abrasive and so irritating that I had to eventually just kind of zone out and forget that they were happening. But I really did not like this sound in particular. But to give a compliment to the sound, I actually really did enjoy the score for the game, which is very simple, kind of loop-based MIDI stuff, but I like the ideas, I like the tones, and it was something that didn't get annoying as I listened to it on repeat for, 15, 20, 30 minutes at a time. Unfortunately, the other big complaint that I have with the game is the thing that caused me to stop playing the game. I eventually came to a level where I encountered some NPCs and was in a parking garage sort of area, and it was actually getting kind of interesting for me because I could begin to see that the game had a bit of a larger scope than I initially thought. And although the game obviously isn't super narrative heavy, there is a little bit of a story going on here, and I am curious about where it goes and how things resolve. But in navigating this level, I came to a platforming section. And the issue with platforming in this game is that when you jump, you tend to skid forward a little bit. If you have any degree of momentum, you have very slippery sort of traction on the floors. And so every single jump in this part was just excruciating, to the point where I was save scumming and just, trying a dozen times to make a jump, and then saving once I finally got it. Now this part opens up with a ninja across the chasm here, throwing ninja stars at you, which will knock you off the platform. So I had to first save scum until I could finally hit this guy with my throwing stars, which wasn't the easiest thing to do because there's not any sort of clear aim or reticle or anything to kind of tell you where these things are going to wind up. On top of how erratic the movement of this enemy is. So, I get it, get good, it's a difficult part, whatever. I don't so much mind having cheap enemies knocking you off of a platform during a platforming section. That's something that goes back to, Castlevania. I can think of a million classic, well-regarded games that pull that trick. It's a shitty trick to pull, but hey, it works, and it's not impossible to overcome. But what is harder to overcome is precision platforming with slippery controls, especially in first person. Now, maybe I'm just bad at this type of thing. I admittedly do not enjoy platforming sections in first person games. It's something I've complained about in games like Postal 2, even Half-Life. Even my recent first impressions video on Beyond Sunset, which opened up with a platforming section, I don't really love this kind of stuff, but in this game especially, the slippery controls made it unbearable for me. to the point where I couldn't keep going. I was ready to put my head through a fucking wall. If you're someone who doesn't mind platforming in first-person games, maybe you'd be better suited to take on this challenge. Maybe I can send you my save file and you can finish this part for me, as if I were passing the controller over to my older sibling to beat the part of the game that I couldn't beat, you know? So that's pretty much it. Those are my first impression, initial thoughts on Retro Ninja Cyber Assassin. I will keep an eye on this game. I'd like to see it come out of early access eventually, but those things take time. Now, I got frustrated with this game and had to stop at a certain point, but there's obviously fun to be had with the game. It's a fun and loving throwback to, old, DOS, FPS type games with some unique twists, and the overtop violence and gore is amusing and entertaining, at least to someone like me who, I don't know, for some reason I'm entertained by that type of shit. I should also note before leaving that the game did introduce me to the music of Infernal Misanthropy, which is a one-man traditional black metal, extreme metal band, one-man band out of Houston. You can eventually go into a sort of seizure warning corridor where you can find his guitar and one of his songs, his titular song, Infernal Misanthropy, plays. And I love this kind of music, so this was a nice little treat for me, so the game gets a few extra points for that. But that's it for now. Please, if you like this, check out the game. There's a link down below to where you can get it on Steam. And be sure to check out the rest of the channel for more first impression videos, as well as plenty of more in-depth breakdowns and analysis of games that we are playing and games that we love and want to share with you. See ya.